Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't. For the week ending July 4th, 2025, happy Independence Day for those celebrating. Incidentally, we are now closer to the year 2050 than we are to the year 2000, so think about that. This is a weekly roundup of the major stories about campus anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, as if those are two different things. And to give you just a sense of the scale of the problem, the stories we're about to discuss today are just a sample from stories of this past week, and it's summer and things are slow. Just imagine what it's like once we get back into the school year. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I am a professor. Please don't hate me. I've been documenting and analyzing campus anti-Semitism for a long time now. For more about me and my work, check out andrewpessin.com. Meanwhile, our sponsor is AMCHA Initiative, a nonprofit that documents anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses, maintains the most comprehensive database of incidents of campus anti-Semitism, covering over 700 universities and more than 10,000 incidents and counting. Find out more and please support their work at amchainitiative.org. All right, let's go to the headlines. We start with a win. Very exciting. The University of California announced this week that student governments and all other university entities are banned from boycotting Israel, a direct response to the Trump administration directive that engaging in such boycotts would leave one ineligible for federal medical and science research grants. To be a little more precise, the directive says they're not allowed to boycott anybody or anything, but we all know, of course, that the only country ever subject to boycott pressure is Israel. So we'll take the win. Moving downhill from there, Columbia University, which will continue to be in the news for some time to come. This week, acting president Claire Shipman had some of her texts exposed in a letter from Congress. And it turned out that along the way, she suggested that they needed to remove a key Jewish member of the Board of Trustees because of her advocacy for Israel and basically replace her, as she said, with an Arab. We need to get an Arab on board. And she suggested that the Jewish trustee was essentially a mole or a fox in the henhouse. At the same time, while the campus was roiled with anti-Jewish activity, she wanted to do more events with Jew-hating Professor Rashid Khalidi of Columbia, even acknowledging that that wouldn't be, quote, popular with Jewish students. So when Jews are being attacked, she wants to basically fan the flames there and get rid of the key trustee who was trying to push back against that. The trustee with whom she had these exchanges, Wanda Green, had added that she is tired of her, referring to the Jewish trustee. Claire Shipman agreed and said, so tired. And just imagine for a moment that there were a Black board member who was standing up for Black rights and opposing hostility to Black members of the university community. And they had had the analogous exchange referring to her as a mole and needing and being tired of her and trying to get rid of her. Wouldn't be tolerated for a second, but somehow when it's the Jews, it seems okay. At the same time, this past week, Columbia announced that they were giving its highest honor, the university professorship, to Jasmine Farrar Griffin, who may be a talented scholar, but also happens to support boycotts against Israel. Voted against the concerns of Jewish students who were complaining about the lack of viewpoint diversity in the Middle East Studies Department, which excludes Israel, of course, and is entirely anti-Israel, and even signed a petition to defend Stephen Saleta, who a professor who years back lost a job appointment because, among other things, he had called anti-Semitism honorable in light of Israel's actions. There's at least some pushback. Columbia was warned by its accreditor this week that its accreditation may be in jeopardy, citing, quote, insufficient evidence that the institution is currently in compliance with the relevant ethics standards of accreditation, end quote. As a reminder, in May, Columbia was found to be in violation of Title VI, with a note stating that the university had acted with deliberate indifference toward the harassment of Jewish students on its campuses since October 7th. By the way, to be in violation of Title VI means you are violating the law. You are doing illegal actions. Speaking of which, Columbia's main rival these days is Harvard University. The Trump administration informed Harvard this week that the university indeed also was violating federal civil rights law over its treatment of Jewish and Israeli students, with the notice saying that they were found to be in, quote, violent violation. This notice came with a 57-page report documenting, quote, the pattern of unlawful and unchecked discrimination against Jewish and Israeli students. As a result of this, the Wall Street Journal reports that Harvard is looking at something like a $1 billion a year budget shortfall given the federal cuts, and is actively contemplating making some deal with the administration in order to retain some of that money. Piling on the big, beautiful bill, quote unquote, that just passed a couple of days ago, is now raising Harvard's endowment tax from 1.4% to 8%. So the financial pressure continues. Uh, Quick venture into politics with respect to Cornell University. New York City mayoral candidate Mamdani, much in the news this past week, apparently called to boycott Cornell back in 2020 over its association with Israel's prestigious Technion University. So that's a taste of things to come should New Yorkers decide to elect him as their mayor. This past week, ISCAP, we mentioned them last week, the Institute for the Study of Global Antisemitism and Policy. They have done more than anyone to document the flow of foreign money into American universities and the deleterious implications of that. Well, they've launched a new podcast now to disseminate their work, called Follow the Money. And the first episode will look at Georgetown University, which has received billions of dollars from Qatar, and they will show that foreign contributions from Qatar have significantly influenced Georgetown's academic environment, research priorities, and faculty recruitment, and ultimately the State Department, because that's the main uh, 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 conduit through which people end up in the State Department. So check that out. Moving on to lawsuits in the legal arena. George Mason University is the latest university to have a Title VI investigation opened against them. Just to remind you of some of the highlights of George Mason in the past year, there was a federal raid of the homes of two SJP students there, which found weapons and ammunition and Hamas and Hezbollah flags and signs that read death to America and death to the Jews. And in December of this past year, the FBI arrested a George Mason freshman who accused him of plotting a terror attack against the Israeli consulate building in Manhattan. So good times at George Mason University. In a significant blow to our cause at Haverford University, a judge this week dismissed the anti-Semitism lawsuit that had been pending there for some time, largely on the grounds that the actions were permitted by the First Amendment. Professor David Bernstein has written a fairly blistering critique of the dubious reasoning in this dismissal. And just one look at the examples of what was going on at Haverford should certainly raise some questions there. It's really shocking what Haverford permitted since October 7th. Lectures disseminating straightforward lies about Israel, student groups promoting resistance by, quote, any means necessary, i.e., violence and terrorism, numerous social media posts by various Haverford professors that disparage those who continue to support Israel. The vice president at Haverford said in a meeting that Jewish students needed to condemn genocide rather than report anti-Semitism, and the president himself said that on October herself said that on October 7th she saw, quote, peaceful people, end quote, breaking free from their chains. The judge noted that as a preliminary matter, none of these statements embrace Hamas, despite not ultimately, straightforwardly endorsing the entire Hamas narrative and justifying what Hamas was doing. In Australia, just so you know, the problems are not located to the side of the pond, or in our little country. University of Sydney proceedings have been brought in the Federal Court of Australia about campus anti-Semitism there. The details are quite gruesome. Nor are the problems limited to the university. So this week saw a couple of significant stories in the K through 12 arena. In Virginia, the Naismith School for the Gifted. The parents of an 11-year-old Jewish student there say that their daughter faced months of anti-Semitic harassment that went unaddressed by school officials. The only thing they managed to do, the school, was to cancel an annual event featuring a Holocaust survivor due to concerns that it would exacerbate tension. So Jews are not allowed to commemorate the Holocaust anymore. It's too controversial. Amongst the main things here, let's take a look at this. There was a um, middle school project. I'm sorry, not a middle school project. Middle school project that the history teacher asked students to work together on an art project to create a large drawing featuring the attributes of strong historical leaders. As you see from the screen share, the students collaborated on a large artistic rendering of a strong leader featuring our friend Adolf Hitler's face. Wonderful school that they've got there. Up north in Massachusetts, the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, filed a complaint with the Department of Education alleging that officials at the Concord Carlisle public schools have done little to stop pervasive anti-Semitic harassment of Jewish students by their peers. For several years, middle schoolers and high schoolers there have been targeted by slurs, Nazi salutes, and swastika graffiti. Turning to some professional organizations now, the International Sociological Association has suspended the Israeli Sociological Society, allegedly over its failure to condemn Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. What's ironic about this, of course, is that the Israeli Sociological Society is filled primarily by very left-wing Israelis who are profoundly critical of Israel in every respect, including having said that they would boycott themselves if they thought that would stop Israel from misbehaving. So even Israelis who are profoundly opposed to Israel are to be boycotted. In the United Kingdom, the British Medical Association has broken off relations with the Israeli Medical Association and is seeking to suspend the latter's position in the World Medical Association. So the doctors are teaming up against the doctors. Doesn't matter that Israeli medicine is, cutting edge, fantastic technology, contributing so much to saving humanity. They must be removed from the table of the acceptable. And then finally, we have a Carleton College journalism professor who regularly posts anti-Israel lies, including pushing over the last week or so the claim that the IDF is every day, daily gunning down people receiving aid, which is the latest massive libel going on there. And he ends one of his posts by saying, "Where is Canada in all this?" Which is a question I echo. Where is Canada in all this, allowing professors to disseminate lies such as these? Can you imagine that your students studying journalism at Carleton University and this is their professor? You would think one of the first rules of journalism is be truthful, but apparently not, at least when it comes to Israel. All right. Well, that's the news, mostly unfortunately. Tune in next week to see what fresh horrors the next wing will bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. Find me at andrewpessin.com. Appreciating the work of Amcha Initiative at amchainitiative.org and hoping everyone manages to hold it together, keep it together until next time. Happy Independence Day.